copies, and it'll hold the original information. Everybody with me so far? Did I lose anyone? Okay, well, let's keep going. Now, I want to get some more of these lines on the outside of my parking lot. I could go through the trouble of drawing more lines and using my move copy parallel. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the copy tool. Okay. It's getting a little crowded in here. Before I do that, I'm going to clean up some of this background so I can see what I'm doing. Now, all of these existing contours happen to be in one reference file. So I brought up my level display. This shows me all of those reference files. Now, all of the contours happen to be in this file. If I right click on that in my level display, I can turn the reference display off. That shuts off all the levels in that file. I don't have to look at them. Right? And that works with any of the references in your level display. So I've cleaned that up. Now I can see what's going on. I want to copy all of these lines over. I'm going to make use of a fence. A fence is one of the ways that we can group elements together temporarily so that we can modify or manipulate them together. If you haven't seen fences before, they look like shapes. Right? I click. When I click to drag and place a new fence, and I have to right click to reset, it will get rid of the old fence. All right. Now I placed a fence that went through these. Let's take a look at, you've got different fence types. This is basically the shape that you want to create.
Getting out of shape.
Over here if you want to use this.
No,
There we go. I've got different shapes that I can create here, or I can create it from the whole file or the view. The different modes then say how that fence is going to act. And as I change this mode, keep an eye on the fence. There are visual cues for how this is set. All right. Inside is only going to affect the things that are inside that fence. If I set it to overlap, see it change to a dash line. Now anything that fence overlaps will be affected. Or I can clip it at the fence line. All right. We also have void. This would be anything outside the fence. You notice it turns red. Void overlap, anything outside or touching. Void clip, just what's outside. All right. We're going to do inside, we're going to do overlap because the way I drew that, I want it to modify anything it touches. And you'll notice as I change these, there's an icon on the bottom of your screen that changes also. Gives you an idea how this is going to act. All right. So with this set to overlap, I'm going to go back to my copy. Now I can use fence. This was grayed out before, but now that I have a fence placed, and I get to those same options here, I can copy anything that's overlapped by the fence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my copy. And if I look down at my AccuDraw, I can see that it's active. I'm going to type in the distance that I want to move that, or that I want to copy this. In this case, I want to copy it over 42 feet. All right. It grabs all of those parking lot lines and groups them together with that fence and copies them over. Make sense? Once it does that, because I've got this fence going, the copy tool does not keep going. It takes me back to my element selection tool. All right. The easiest way to get rid of the fence is with element selection. Just click somewhere outside of any element on your screen. That will get rid of the current fence. Now, I want to copy these in a similar manner. But just to show you a different way of doing it, I didn't have to use fence. I could select those elements with a crossing window. Notice if I do it from the other side, it doesn't select them. If I do it from the top to bottom and include all of them, it picks them that way. Left to right versus right to left gets you a crossing fence versus an inside fence. A selection set, I should say, not fence. Sorry. Does everybody see the difference there? So instead of using a fence, I can easily come in here, select these, and I could go all the way back up and hit copy, or I can hold down my right click and I can go to copy here. All right, so with MicroStation, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. So with those selected and with copy active, I can data point, and again, my AccuDraw is ready to go. I can move down. Now, I could type in the 42 again, but with AccuDraw, when you get to the last thing you typed in, it does what's called indexing. I don't know if you can see that. It kind of snaps to that place and it puts a little crossbar at the end of my display here. That lets me know that it is locked on whatever the previous value was. If I do it in this direction, it should do the same thing. It's 42, locks in. So as long as you're using the same distance, you can quickly move things or copy things that distance. When I'm done, it goes back to element selection. I data pointed out in space. That released my selection set. So far, so good? All right, we need to clean this up a little more. I'm going to grab my copy parallel. I am going to leave the settings. I believe we have what we want. We're going to go 9 feet. We don't want to use active attribute. I'm going to set those. Do the same thing down here. Now, that can be tedious. Up here, I want to add 14 more parking lot lines. I don't want to click on this and have to click a bunch of times. So let me go to my copy tool. And what we can do is we can change the number of copies we make at a time. So in this case, if I wanted to make 14 more of these, I would set my tool to 13, pick my element, and with AccuDraw, I would set it to 9 feet. And when I click to accept, it drops the rest of this in there for me. Okay. So this was the one we copied. We have 13 of those selected, so it made 13 of these because I told it to here. Make sense? So if you have to do things more than once, look for the easy way to do it. Now I want to go ahead and put a curb at the end of that. So I'm going to use my active attribute in this case. That sets it because it's set here. Let me go ahead and do the same thing down here and down here. Okay. Now, one more thing we want to do. I want to lay out another curb. In this case, it's going to be 12 feet off of this center line. So I grab it, offset it, place it. All this stuff should be pretty straightforward. Any questions on what I've done so far? Does this all make sense? So far we've used manipulate tools. Now I want to come into some of my modify tools. Okay. First thing I want to look at is construct circular fillet. Just like it sounds, I'm going to create a fillet between two elements. I'm going to give it the radius I want to use. In this case, I'll be putting in a 5-foot radius. And since I'm going to be clicking on several elements, I want it to trim both elements to the radius that I set. If I follow my instructions, find my first segment, find my second segment, and I click both of those, it puts in a 5-foot radius. It trims both elements back to that radius. Okay. Let's look at that again. All right, so I click first element, click the second element, and it's ready to keep going. I can click the first and the second, first and the second, and pretty quickly I can trim these all up. All right. I'm going to go back to my offset. Let's change this to 24 feet. I'm going to use my active curb attribute. I guess I don't have to. Since I'm going to copy a curb, I can use that active attribute or not because it's already set. Then I can go back and I can trim this back up and make it pretty. What about here and here? I don't necessarily want to fill it, so I'm going to go to my trimmed intersection. Right? Works in a similar manner. Instead of putting in the radius, I pick my first element, I pick my second element, it trims both of them back to the intersection. Pick my first element, pick my second element, it trims both of them. What if I want to do that without so many clicks? Well, we've got trim multiple, right? And this has got different settings here. I can trim and extend. I can do just trim, or I can do just extend. In this case, I want to trim both of these back. I'm going to select the trim elements, and it's okay if I got an extra one. It'll trim back to the first one it sees. And I can trim both at the same time without having to go back and select another element. So far, so good. And again, this is another tool that's got the option of I can pick just what's inside, or I can pick anything that it crosses. All right, so the order and direction, the order and direction of how you set your, let me get back to the identify edges. Order and direction matter for how I pull that window. Make sense? Everybody with me so far? Okay. Another manipulate tool that we've got is mirror. Now, if I wanted to copy all of these and mirror them about, that's going to be quicker with this tool. What I can do, and let me clean up my drawing here. I'm going to get some of these sidewalks and side roads out of the way. Let's go to the proposed building, and we'll I'm turning off these sidewalks and these buildings. There we go. That way I don't accidentally grab them as I'm picking my parking lot lines. So with my mirror tool active, I'm going to make a copy about the horizontal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my window around everything I want to mirror. Let me try that again. Everything I want to mirror. Since I drew these from the center points, I don't need to copy those. And I don't want to copy the curb line here. So I did a left to right window rather than right to left. Now when I data point, I just have to pick the point that I want to mirror about. Since this is the center, I can snap to the center of my pad, or I can snap anywhere along this element. When I click again, it places it. It's ready to mirror again, so I need to right click to reset. Make sense? If I just wanted to mirror the one object, I grab that, mirror that, throw that up there. Something else that's important to look at, let's do this. I forgot to trim up here. If I want to move or if I want to copy, move, manipulate multiple objects, it's a good idea to select your objects first, and then you can go grab the tool. It looks at what you've selected. You can make your changes. In this case, I'm going to go vertical. All right. Because I picked the elements first, it's ready to mirror those over and copy them. Click to place, right click to reset. So if you're going to act on multiple elements, my recommendation is you pick the elements first and then pick the tool you want to use. If you want to work on the elements one at a time, you pick your tool, and then as you do it, it keeps that tool active. Is that difference clear? Let me back up and show you that again. I pick multiple elements first, and then I pick my tool. When I place it and I reset, it goes back to my element selection. Let's see if this works the way I'm hoping. This way, if I place a bunch of elements and I reset, it stays in that tool. Okay. So selecting first versus selecting second with respect to picking your tool will have different options. Different behavior, I should say. Everybody still with me? Everything still making sense? See, I've got this hanging out here. Let me come to, this is trim to element. All right, this is similar to trim to intersection, but if I only want to trim one piece, and I can follow my prompts down here, I pick what I want to modify, and then I pick the place that I want it to stop. All right, similar behavior, just a little bit different in how you approach it. Any questions so far? It looks like I missed a line. Let me mirror that. Where's my mirror? There it is. Since it's only one, I pick the tool first, and then I pick the element to mirror. All right, let's talk briefly about the element selector tool. You've got different options here. All right, I recommend you use the first on each of these, the individual and new. All right, the top row is how is it going to select. I can draw a block. I can do a shape. That's a crossing shape. That's an inside shape. Use a circle. Or you can just use a straight line. There are times when it's nice to just pick things by a line. But if you use this first option, you can get squares. You can pick individuals. You can basically have a line. And the added bonus is, oh, I guess that's the mode. So down here, you've got your different, I want to say modes. New, add, subtract, invert, and select or clear all. Right? The reason I suggest you keep the first one, new, is that if I have a selection set, all I have to do to get rid of that selection set is click anywhere. If I have a part of a selection set and I want to add more, I can hold down my control key and I can add more elements to that set. or if they're already selected and I hold my control, I can take elements out of that set. So the first three are all included in the first one. Invert is just what it sounds like. If I've got some selected and some not selected, when I pick this, it will invert your set. Take a bigger square here and you get an idea. So right now I've got the 4 selected. When I pick this larger area and notice it's not a crossing window, it inverts the selection. This is a crossing window. It inverts my selection. This last option is pretty much what it looks like. If you have all elements selected, this is clear all. If you have no elements selected, this is select all. All right. But the clear all is also part of new, because if I pick somewhere outside of any elements, it clears everything. Does that all make sense? Any questions on element selection? Okay, I've got a few more things I want to show you. Let's do a little setup for this. I am going to, let's go back to our copy. Let's set our distance to 12. And I'm going to make some more curbs. So let's got that set to curb. I'm going to use my active attribute, and I'm going to set that, and that. This gives us some more curb to work with. Another modify tool that we're going to look at is break element. All right. I'm going to have to come up here and clean some of this up in a little bit. So I'm going to need to break some of these elements into multiple elements. Now I could use 2 points and put a gap in it. I could break it with a line or drag a line across to break it. But what I'm going to use is break by point. And all I need to do with this then is click where I want to break that element. And you can see now I've got 2 elements that stop where I clicked. Break it here, I've got 2 elements. Break this here, I've now got 2 elements. Okay. Now I can go back with my trim tool and clean some of these up. I'm going to use my construct circular fillet again. Since I've got it set to 5, let me go ahead and do the 5-foot radii I need. And for these others, I'm going to make those 15 feet. So I type in 15, I hit my down arrow or tab, and then I can go through. And because I have truncate both set, as I click on these, it's going to trim both of them back to my radius. So far, so good. All right, on my road up here, I want to put some radii into this existing road. The problem I have is if I go to use it, I get this little no symbol sign, and it tells me that the element is read-only in a reference. So what I need to do is I need to copy this element into my current file. One of the things we can do is copy across references. I'm going to select that with my copy tool. I'm going to snap to the end of one of these lines. And to make sure it's in the same place, I'm going to snap to that same point to data point to accept. It's still on my cursor to copy it in again and again, so I need to right click and reset. Now this edge of pavement is in my current file. And if I go back to my circular fillet, and I'm going to make a 15-foot radius on this, in this case, I don't want to trim both elements. I just want to trim the first one. Click the element, click where to trim it, puts in my radius, trims the first element back to that radius. Pick my element, pick where I want it to stop, puts in my radius, and only trims the first one. Make sense? Any questions so far? Now, if I got this wrong and it was supposed to be a 30-foot radius, It is not smart enough to fix that. I would need to go back in and delete off my mistakes. So these radii that it puts in are separate elements from the original lines. I no longer need this. I can come up here to my delete tool, or as you saw earlier, I can right click and hold down. I get a pop-up menu. Delete is at the bottom. I can delete that out of my current file. Everybody still with me? Let's look at, instead of construct circular fillet, let's look at construct chamfer. Right? Same idea, but it wants to know how far back off of that intersection do I want to put that chamfer. Right? In this case, I did 30-foot radius on the fillet. Let's do 30 on the chamfer, and I'm going to do it for both the distances. Now, if I were to pick these two elements now, let's just go ahead and do it. It throws in that chamfer with the active attribute. How do we change that? Well, element selector, or hit escape. I can pick that element. I can come up to my properties and change the properties here. But I don't remember what this is, so I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to use change element attributes. All right. I don't want to change my active attribute, so I'm not going to check this, but I want to change the color, level, style, and weight. I'm going to match, wait, hold on. Looks like I've got it selected already. I'm going to match what I want it to be, and then I'm going to change that element. All right. If I wanted that to be my active attributes, I could match. That sets my active attributes. Now when I go to do my chamfer, and I pick my two elements, it brings it in the correct symbology. So you have to pay attention to the order in which you do things. You can always go back and fix your mistakes. It's just easier sometimes to set things ahead of time. And I tell you what, since I found this Alt key level change by clicking on it, I've been doing that all day long. Those are the basics that they wanted me to show you. I've got a challenge exercise I can go through for putting a dumpster pad down here. It really just goes through the same tools. I'm going to open it up before I do that to questions. Anybody have any questions about the basic manipulate or modify tools in MicroStation? Oh, looks like we got a text. Let's see what we got. Never used circle fences in 25 years. I'm with you. I have used circle fences. I think it was one time when I was clipping a reference file and I had to clip it to a circle for a detail. I take that back. I used that a couple of times when I did typical sections. I would use that for details. I would reference it back into the file at a larger scale so you could see the layers, the pavement layers. Any other questions on how these things work?
Okay. Can you repeat about how to change the attributes only clicking the line?
How to change the active level?
Yes, sir.
There's a couple of ways you can change the active level, okay? The easiest one I've found is on your keyboard, hold down the Alt key, and then click on another line that's got the level you want. So as I click around in the file, you'll notice that my levels are changing. And I can even grab it across references. Okay, so if the line is already in there, that's the easy way that I know to change it. You've also got in your modify toolbar, I use the change attributes a lot because I can select from the tool if you're not looking to change attributes on another one, Smart Match is probably the way you want to go. All right. And with Smart Match, it's very similar. I click and it should change my settings. Yep. To whatever I select. Did that get it? Or did you want me to go into that a little further? The other ways you can do that, if it's already placed and you want to change it, if it's placed and I have it selected, as soon as I change levels, let's go to, oh, I've still got my search, no wonder. If I change this to curb, notice it changed that line. Let me undo, Control Z. So if I've got an element selected and I change the level that it's on, it will change the attributes of that element. I can also go into my properties and I can change the level there. That's now a bridge deck. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah, the alt trick, I tell you, I've been using it for 20 years and I just learned it this year. I wish I'd have known this a while back. Oop, that was control. So you can control, I'm sorry, you can hit your control and select multiple things. But if you hit alt as you select them, it'll change your settings. Fences can be dangerous. Agreed. Fences aren't nearly as dangerous as they used to be. But what would happen back in the day, they had this thing called the undo cache, where MicroStation used to only remember so many of your undos, and you would set a fence and forget about it, and it would be set to void, and you'd end up doing a delete fence contents. Well, if you happen to have these settings and you hit delete fence contents and you didn't realize you had a fence, it would delete everything in your file. And then you'd have to go back and you'd hit undo. And because there was an undo cache, not everything would come back. So you'd have to go and get a older version of your file. You don't have to worry about it as much now. It is not nearly as dangerous. They got rid of that undo cache. So when you hit undo, it should bring back everything. That's not to say it's not dangerous. It is. So keep an eye down here and see if you have fences before you hit things that can possibly mess up your design. Learned about the alt trick a couple years ago from Dave Mayer. Dave's a good guy. He does know a lot. It has a transparent color shape too. Yes. I don't know if you guys saw that. If you can see it on my screen, see there's kind of a green background when you're inside or the top three. When you switch to the voids, it goes to red. Stretch tool. Question about that. Stretch tool is a great tool to play with. The way we used to do this back when you had to draw all of your drainage profiles by hand, if I had a block that represented a catch basin, I could come in with my place a fence around the end of it, and then with my, is this it? Stretch tool, I could grab that and pull it down to the elevation I want. And with AccuDraw, you can offset that a specific amount. The one thing you want to watch out for is if you pull it off to the side, it pulls it off to the side. Now, the great thing about the stretch tool is that it works inside cells. So if you've got a cell that's set up and you want to modify it, and you're able to stretch part of it, go back to, there it is. You could modify inside a cell without dropping the cell. I used this when we had sheet cells that would have grids on them. Usually this would be cross sections. If we had grids and I needed to clip out part of the bottom so I could put in information, I would use the stretch tool to grab the ends of those grid lines. And then I would stretch them back out of the way so I could put my text in there. Does it work for civil cells? I don't think so. I don't have a positive answer for you on that. I'm not sure. I would have to play with it, but I would think your civil cells you don't want to do stretches on. Great question, though. I mean, we should play with that and find out. What on a civil cell would you want to stretch? Usually it modifies the line work to get to where you want. You talking like an offset? Curb and gutter? Yeah, I would shy away from it, but give it a try. Civil cells are a whole nother animal that I'm not going to pretend I know all the ins and outs of those.
Yeah,
That-
Ethan, it's probably a long shot. I mean, it's because the one that Bentley delivers,
Mhm.
it's a different curb and gutter dimension, and we always have to explode the cells.
Oh, so
and
you
make
just
them
want to
out.
stretch that?
Yeah.
That would
Without
make it nice,
exploding
wouldn't it?
stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you've got it, well, with those, you've got the additional, I don't want to say problem, but the additional attribute of being in 3D. So just because you stretch it out doesn't necessarily mean you stretch it out the way you want because you're in 3 dimensions. So I would be hesitant to try and stretch things on civil cells. It might be easier to get in there and just modify the offset for your curb and gutter.
Yeah.
But modifying a civil cell, again, that's a whole other animal. That could be a training course in and of itself, I'm sure. Okay, so the Dean has shared that he goes into the button settings. Button assignments. Is this where you set it? Yep. So he'll set his alt data. Oh, I see what you're saying. If this is set to match attributes from cursor, it'll only match level type attributes. If you've got it set to match element, it will also match your text attributes like font. That's a good tip. Thank you. And really, button assignments, if you guys haven't looked in here, well, I don't want to give you the green light to change everything, but you can say if you've got a more advanced mouse with multiple buttons on it, it's worth taking your time to come in here and set up some of those additional buttons. I've seen people set all sorts of things to buttons where you can view previous, or do I have that one set? Pan drag is a huge one. If that's not set by default, go and set your pan drag. What that does, let me go back and show you. There we go. Why isn't it working? Pan drag. Oh, I know why, because I have it set to X button 1. So that's apparently my X button one. Pan drag is this. That's not the one I want. I want, I'll have to look up the shortcut and put it in the chat window later on. There's one where you click drag pan. I don't remember the shortcut offhand. Is it click drag? User button assignments. I don't remember offhand what it is. I'll have to come back with that. Let me look it up.
Hold your shift and put a data point on it that sets the anchor point you pull away from it, Ethan.
Yeah. Is that click drag, click pan? What's the shortcut for it?
Don't know.
I've used it for years, but I never have to go and set it. That's the problem.
I think it's just shift data. I don't see it on that list. Try it over on there. It may be set inherently without being a button assignment. I'm gonna go back to your view and see if it'll pan. Shift and data point.
Yeah, it's shift and tentative now. So you can set what it is here, right? So shift and data point, but I would have to have the action. Pan scroll, let me try that.
Well, what I'm saying is it may already be set.
Well, I've only got pan drag set. So X button one, that's just where you click and you move it.
Mhm.
This is pan drag. That's pan drag. There it is. So yeah, pan scroll. Thanks, Travis. So the way this works is if you hold down, well, whatever button combination you set, in this case, that's shift and data point for me. So if you hold down shift and you data point and drag, it'll shift your window over your design. And then when you let go of both, it stops. That's a nice feature if you have that set. You can get across a whole lot of ground real quick. Of course, scroll in, scroll out does work also. Oh, looks like we're at the top of the hour. Anybody have any other questions before I close us out here? Again, here's my email if you guys need to get a hold of me. Drop me a line. I'm happy to answer questions if I can. If I can't, I'll go find somebody who does know the answer and I'll get that to you.
And hey, Ethan, this is Patty. I'm
Hi,
sorry
Patty.
I joined late, and I don't know, I didn't get in here to start recording. I started recording a little bit late. I was late to the party, but it sounds like you got off to a good start. I don't know if anybody opened you up, but I appreciate you coming today and showing
Not a
us all
problem.
these great tips and tricks. And
I believe we got another one scheduled next month. We'll come back
Yep.
and look at some more.
Yep, I do appreciate it. So we will, for everybody else, we'll post this recording up online, and then we also will be sending out PDH credits and sometime soon. But we do appreciate it. And, we have some more things coming up in the next couple of weeks. And Ethan, do you have any news? Is the Bentley user conference coming up in June?
I believe it is.
I was just thinking about that, but I haven't
specifics.
seen any information. Usually there's a ton of information that comes out about that.
Yeah, it looks like, hold on, I got a email here. It looks like it's 15th to 18th of June.
Yeah.
I think you guys need to register. And then everything is online this year because of COVID. But it should have we should have some good information there as well.
And
So
it's usually free if if your company has Bentley subscription, I think.
I believe so. Don't
Usually
quote me on that though.
Yeah, no, I think a good majority of people do. So I would just say take advantage, but there should be a bunch of, usually they have a bunch of keynote speakers and some things like that that are a little bit different than just the training too. So.
Right. And it's a good place to, get new ideas of how the stuff works and talk to some of the folks at Bentley who design it. and get some of your questions answered directly by the programmers.
So if we get more details on that, we'll be sure to, NCLUG will be sure to send it out to everybody. So
Thanks
as
for
always,
joining, everyone.
appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.